Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Morning light spilled through the tall windows of the Newman Ranch, casting long golden streaks across the polished floor. The house felt too quiet, too still, and in Genoa City, silence was never a good sign. Nikki Newman stood near the fireplace, a half-finished cup of coffee cooling in her hand. Her mind wasn't on the business reports stacked on the table or the charity luncheon she was supposed to attend later. It was on her son. Nick. He hadn't been himself for weeks, restless, distracted, guarded. Victoria entered from the foyer, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. She removed her sunglasses, eyes already sharp with suspicion. "You've noticed it too," Victoria said without preamble. Nikki exhaled slowly, "He's slipping away from us." Victoria crossed her arms. "He barely answers calls, he's snapping at people, even at Sharon." She paused, "Especially at Sharon." Nikki looked troubled. Nick has always carried the weight of this family differently. He tries to protect everyone, but lately it feels like he's fighting something we can't see. Victoria stepped closer. "You think it's business?" "No," Nikki's voice was firm, "it's personal." A long silence passed between them. Victoria finally spoke. "Dad's pushing hard at Newman. There are rumors about a potential acquisition that could cause backlash. Nick doesn't agree with it, he never has." Nikki's expression darkened. "Victor does what Victor wants." "Yes," Victoria replied coolly, "but Nick internalizes it. Every fight with Dad becomes a moral war inside him." Nikki set her coffee down. "He looked exhausted when I saw him yesterday, and not just physically." Victoria softened slightly. "Maybe we need to intervene." Carefully, Nikki warned, "Nick doesn't respond well to pressure." Victoria nodded. "Then we don't pressure him, we remind him he's not alone." Across town, Nick stood alone in crimson lights, staring at his untouched espresso. The cafe buzzed around him, but he heard none of it. His phone vibrated. "Victoria." He ignored it. The weight in his chest felt heavier with every passing day. His father's latest move, tensions at Newman Enterprises, Sharon's questions, and something else, something deeper, a gnawing sense that he was losing control. Nick ran a hand through his hair. He hated feeling this way. He hated feeling weak. The bell above the cafe door chimed and he glanced up. Sally Spectra walked in. She spotted him immediately but hesitated, sensing something off. After a brief pause, she approached. "Hey," she said softly. Nick forced a faint smile. "Hey." As she studied him, "You look like you didn't sleep." "Business," he replied automatically. Sally didn't buy it, but she didn't press. "Well, I hope you figure it out," she said gently. "You don't have to carry everything alone." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and something flickered behind his eyes. But instead of opening up, he shut down. "I've got it handled." Sally nodded, though disappointment lingered in her expression. "Of course you do." She left soon after, leaving Nick alone again and somehow feeling even more isolated. Later that afternoon, at Chancellor Winter's, Billy Abbott leaned back in his chair as Sally paced in front of him. "You ever feel like your past is a shadow you can't outrun?" she asked suddenly. Billy arched an eyebrow. "That's a very loaded question." She stopped packing. "I've reinvented myself so many times, Billy. LA fashion houses, drama, heartbreak. I've clawed my way back from public humiliation more than once." Billy smirked faintly. "Yeah, I've heard a few legends." She shot him a look. "It's not funny." His expression softened. "I know." Sally sighed and sank into the chair opposite him. "Sometimes I wonder if people here will ever see me as more than the woman who caused chaos, the schemer, the outsider." Billy leaned forward. "You've grown." "Have I?" she asked quietly. "Or have I just gotten better at hiding the messy parts?" Billy studied her carefully. He understood reinvention. He had practically built a career on it, reckless playboy to corporate contender to media disruptor. "You don't have to hide anything with me," he said. She hesitated, then she began to talk. About her childhood, about fighting for scraps of validation, about moving to Los Angeles with nothing but ambition and a stubborn belief that she deserved more, about the mistakes, the manipulations, the desperate plays for survival. Billy listened, really listened. "There were moments," Sally admitted, voice trembling slightly, "when I thought burning everything down was easier than admitting I was scared." Billy nodded slowly. "Fear makes us do stupid things." She laughed weakly, understatement. He leaned back. "You're not that woman anymore." How do you know? She asked. Because you're sitting here telling me this instead of plotting your next move. That made her smile faintly. Across town, Audra Charles stood in a sleek suite overlooking the city skyline. She stared out the window, tension radiating from her posture. Behind her, Holden Novick watched quietly. You don't have to do this, he said. Audra didn't turn around. Yes, I do. You're about to burn a bridge you might need later. She finally faced him. If I don't, I lose everything. The deal on the table was risky, extremely risky. Victor Newman had made it clear he wasn't amused by recent moves that threatened Newman dominance. Audra had been towing a dangerous line, aligning herself with ambitious strategies that could either elevate her status or destroy her. Holden stepped closer. Let me take the fall. Her eyes widened. What? I can position it so the board believes it was my call, my miscalculation. That would destroy your credibility. He shrugged slightly. Better mine than yours. Audra's voice softened. Why would you do that? Holden held her gaze. Because you're meant for bigger things than being collateral damage. She searched his face, unsure whether to trust what she saw. You don't owe me that, she said. Maybe not, he replied, but I'm offerings. The air between them grew heavy. Audra was used to alliances built on ambition and convenience. Sacrifice wasn't part of the equation. You could lose everything, she warned. He gave a small, almost reckless smile. Wouldn't be the first time. Meanwhile, Nikki and Victoria sat in Victoria's office at Newman Enterprises, reviewing reports they weren't really reading. We need to talk to him together, Victoria insisted. Nikki nodded. Tonight. Victoria hesitated. And what if he shuts us out? Nikki's expression hardened with maternal resolve. Then we remind him that no matter how powerful he thinks he needs to be, he's still our Nick. As evening fell, the tension across Genoa City intensified. Nick stood on the balcony of his apartment, staring at the city lights below. His phone buzzed again. This time he answered. Mom, come to the ranch, Nikki said gently. Victoria's here too. He closed his eyes briefly. He knew what this was. I'm fine. I know you want us to believe that, Nikki replied softly, but we don't. A long silence followed. Finally, Nick exhaled. I'll be there. Back at the suite, Holden made the call that would change everything. He accepted responsibility for the strategic misstep, framing it as an overreach on his part. He assured the board that Audra had raised concerns, that she had tried to steer things cautiously. It was convincing. And devastating. When he ended the call, Audra stared at him in disbelief. It's done, he said quietly. Her voice was barely above a whisper. You didn't hesitate. I told you, he replied, you're not going down for this. Audra stepped closer, emotion flickering across her usually controlled expression. You just sacrificed your future. He met her gaze. Maybe I'm investing in something else. For the first time in a long time, Audra felt something crack inside her carefully constructed armor. Not ambition. Not strategy. Something real. The ranch felt different that night. Nick walked in to find Nikki and Victoria waiting in the living room. No business documents, no distractions. Just family. Victoria spoke first. You're unraveling. Nick's jaw tightened. That's dramatic. Is it? Nikki asked gently. He paced. I'm just tired. Tired doesn't explain the anger, Victoria countered. Nick stopped. Dad is pushing another aggressive expansion. It's reckless. It'll create enemies we don't need. Victoria's expression sharpened. Newman Enterprises survives because we're not afraid. And what's the cost? Nick shot back. How many bridges do we burn before there's nothing left but enemies? Silence. Nikki rose and approached him. You've always been the conscience of this family. He looked away. That's exhausting. Her voice softened, then stopped carrying it alone. For the first time, the tension in his shoulders eased slightly. I don't want to become him, Nick admitted quietly. I don't want power to harden me. Victoria's gaze softened just a little. You're not Dad. But I see it, Nick said. The ruthlessness, it's in me too. Nikki cupped his face gently. Having strength doesn't mean you lose your soul. Emotion flickered in his eyes. Meanwhile, at Chancellor Winters, Sally stood by the window as Billy joined her. You look lighter, he observed. I feel exposed, she replied, but maybe that's better than pretending. Billy nodded. You're not your worst mistake. She glanced at him. Neither are you. A charged silence followed, not romantic, not yet, but intimate in its honesty. Across town, news of Holden's resignation began to circulate. Audra sat alone, reading the internal memo confirming his departure from key projects. The narrative was clear. He had miscalculated. He had overreached. He had fallen. Her phone buzzed. It was him. She answered immediately. You shouldn't have done it. You would have, he replied calmly, if the roles were reversed. She didn't deny it. Now what? She asked. Now, he said quietly, you rise. The line went silent after that. Audra stared out at the city lights, conflicted. Ambition had always been her compass, but Holden's sacrifice complicated everything. For once, someone had chosen her over power. At the ranch, the conversation stretched late into the night. Nick admitted fears he had buried, doubts about leadership, concerns about becoming a version of himself he wouldn't recognize. Victoria listened more than she argued. Nikki held his hand. And for the first time in weeks, Nick felt grounded. The storm wasn't over. Victor would still push. Business battles would still rage. Audra's ascent would shift alliances. Holden's fall would ripple outward. Sally's vulnerability would reshape her path with Billy. But something had changed. Nick wasn't alone anymore. Sally wasn't hiding. Audra wasn't untouched by sacrifice. And in Genoa City, those quiet shifts mattered as much as explosive scandals. Because power wasn't just about dominance. It was about the choices made when no one was watching. And on this night, choices had been made that would echo long after the headlines faded.